Welcome to My Watches with Ben, where I talk about choices I've made in my watch collecting hobby. Was this a good or a bad choice? Keep watching to find out. Today's watch is the Glycine Airman. It's an iconic pilot watch with a 24-hour movement with really excellent usefulness for travelers. And there's a ton of history to this watch. So first I'm going to start off with that history, then I'll cover the specs and features, the positives and the negatives, and give my final thoughts. Put some timestamps in for you. Let's start off with the history. History. In 1953, at the request of British pilot and commander Chat Brown, Glycine introduced its first airman watch. The early ones were pretty much all white dials. They had 24-hour dials. It said AM and PM and noon on the dial. And the one I'm reviewing today is in the same style as that first model. I have a black dial version. There's some other colors as well. Like I said, the original one was white. The Airman was super popular among pilots and world travelers during the 60s and 70s because it is very useful when you're crossing time zones. Pilots wanted a 24-hour movement and a rotating bezel. This enables a pilot to easily track two time zones. And you can just change the away time zone by turning this bezel. Your home time zone is the same all the time. You don't have to actually change the time on your watch all the time. All you have to do is just change the bezel as you move to different time zones. And you've got your away time there and the home time simultaneously. The very first model was in 36 millimeters. That's probably no surprise. It was the 50s, so a 36 millimeter watch was a more popular size. This particular one today is in 40 millimeters, but the first ones were in 36. So just 4 years later, they changed the style of it pretty dramatically, in my opinion. They took away the Dauphine hands. They wanted to make it even easier to tell which one's the hour and which one is the minute. So they put a gigantic arrow on that hour hand. They also added a tail on the other side of the hour hand. So when you're in the PM time, if it's 1700, that tail's going to be pointing at 5. You know it's 5 PM when it says 1700 because you just look at the tail. I went with the one with the Dauphine hands because I think it's a more sophisticated look. That's what I was more into. The 1957 version with the arrow hour is more distinctive. Today, Glycine is currently owned by Invicta, for better or worse, right? I saw this Glycine Invicta mashup that was looking pretty bad. I gotta say, it doesn't look so good. I hope Invicta doesn't ruin Glycine. I know that's the concern of a lot of people, but I think that's one of the reasons I was able to get this for a lot cheaper, is because Glycine has been picked up by Invicta. It might be the time to get one. I have no idea. But yeah, there's a lot of models of Airmen right now. So many Airman watches. Many of them have GMT hands. So if you want the old school model like I have, be sure to check for the word purist. Another thing is, if it has a GMT hand, that means it's not a purist. So try to find one with 3 hands if you're going for the purist thing. And if it doesn't say purist, it's likely to have a 12-hour movement. Definitely do your research before pulling the trigger on one of these so you know if you want a regular GMT, you're getting a regular GMT. If you want the purist thing, you're getting the purist. It can be tricky to find these watches online at a reasonable price. Other options of this exact design include there's a white version with nice black hands actually, a blue version, a green, and I can't tell if this is brown or gray, but those are the different dials you get. They also have 2 PVD bronze tone versions. So these aren't bronze, they're bronze tone. The model numbers are on the screen, so you can screenshot if you want to find them. So here they are. All right, so that's the history of the watch. Now let's go on to the specifications. Specifications. The diameter is 40 millimeters. The lug width is 22. The thickness is 12 1/4. The lug to lug is 49.3. Well under 50. Well, just a little under 50. Water resistance is only 50 meters, sadly. It does say that on the case back here. Crystal is sapphire. The movement inside is the SW330. They call it the GL0277. I think there might be some subtle difference. I'll get into that a little bit later, but it is a Sellita SW330-2 that's engraved on the movement itself. The price I paid for this was $599 from Watch Guru on eBay, and the case material is stainless steel. On to the features. Features. All right, the most prominent feature is the second crown here at the 8 o'clock. I guess that would normally be 4 o'clock, but it's the 8 o'clock on the 24-hour dial. So that's probably the most prominent feature, the most unique thing about this. It's used to secure the bidirectional free spinning bezel. So I unscrewed it here. It only screws or unscrews a little bit. There's not much motion. Once you unscrew it, you can turn this however you want. Let's have the 8-hour offset from my time. And then screw this in, and it won't move. It'll just stay how you want it. It's really handy. You can actually operate it on the wrist. It's easy to turn this and then change the bezel and then tighten that down, and it won't move. Very, very easy to use. I can see why this was popular with pilots, because it's no big deal to just change this, and it totally stays put. Once you screw the bezel lock down, it's not going to move. So that's really nice. The way you would use this, so I'll show you. All right, so let's say it's 8:35 here in Mountain Time. Let's say I'm going to visit the East Coast. What I would do is I would keep the clock on its original time. This will show me my home time, the 8:30. On the East Coast, they're 2 hours earlier, so I would advance this 2 hours. They're 2 hours ahead of us. So I put the 2 at the top instead of the 24. And this shows me the East Coast time. It's 10:35 instead of 8:35. And I can see both at the same time. My home time is 8:35. My away time is 10:35. So that's pretty cool. All right, now let's go through all the parts of the watch, starting with the hands. The hands are a gold tone Dauphine style hour and minute hands filled with lume. The second hand reaches all the way out. Yeah, so the second hand you see ticking away there has a tiny little lollipop near the end, which has lume in it. The dial printing is all in bronzy gold paint. It doesn't quite look gold. It kind of looks like bronze. I'll start from the outside and work in. So on the edge is a railroad minute track with Arabic numerals printed in increments of 5. The fifths of the second are also printed. These tiny, tiny little marks just on the outside. And the printing is extremely precise. Let me zoom in. That should give you a feel for it. Look at how precise that is. Very precise printing. My eyes are not that good to see that closely, but it looks good. At 6 o'clock, you see the word Swiss made, printed microscopically in like 2-point font. There's no way you're going to be reading that. All the 24 hours are shown here, well, except for the 6 a.m. here. Oh, the 6 is even there. Look, the 6 is there. You can't really see it with the Cyclops. Cyclops kind of messes it up. Okay, so all 24 hours are there. They didn't even skip the 6. It's all there for you. The even hours are larger, and then the odd hours have a little triangle and are in kind of a smaller size. We also get the text Glycine Airman, AM and PM and noon, and then, the Swiss made I already mentioned. But yeah, so this side is AM, this side is PM, and then here's your 12 noon, just in case you were confused about all this. Okay, let's take a look at that lume. Let's take a look at the lume. All you get for lume is the hands. The hour, the minute, and the second. And who knows what time it is in the dark. There is no reference point. So I think this was going to be very hard to tell the time. You'll be able to kind of tell, in the dark, you can kind of tell which end is up. So you can kind of see, it's almost the top of the hour or something. At night, what you kind of want to know is the hour, and that's going to be difficult with this 24-hour movement and no indexes marked. Okay, the date is in red font here on a white background. And I think red looks really good with the black dial. I like it. It's charming. Oh, back to lume for a second. The lack of lume on the indexes, I'm okay with the trade-off because I think the gold text looks really nice. It's very distinctive. It's very retro look. I don't mind that it's missing the lume. It's just, you are missing out on some functionality there. The Cyclops is pretty decent here. Okay, so if I hold up the ruler, it appears to be 2 millimeters across unmagnified and then 4 millimeters across magnified. So I'm going to say this is a 2 times magnification on the Cyclops. The crystal is ever so slightly domed. It is very hard to see. The only way you can really tell is if you look from the side. You can see that Cyclops is slightly angled. So that tells me that this crystal is ever so slightly domed. You can kind of tell it's a little bit domed, not very much. The crystal is very reflective. It's not quite as bad as like the Hamilton khaki, but it is pretty reflective. Okay, the bezel is brushed steel. Each of these numbers and the triangles and even the dots is kind of engraved into the bezel. What do they call that? A relief? And then it's filled with black paint, glossy black paint. It looks good. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it's bidirectional. It can go either way. And it's just operated here with this bezel lock. Just freely spins until you lock it down. The knurling is a coin edge style. It actually looks exactly like a quarter. The little teeth on the bezel lock are very small. Yeah, and see it matches the coin edge exactly. Only the even numbers are shown, and the odd numbers you get the triangles, just like on the dial. And the 2 6s we see on the bezel do not connect fully. Kind of look like G's or something. It's kind of a vintage style. Case finishing. The case itself is just kind of a circle. There's really nothing more to it than that. And it just goes straight up and down. It's a very plain case. It is polished on the sides and the sides of the lugs there. Yeah, the sides are just straight up and down flat. Very simple. The lugs are kind of, they go straight down like here, but then they angle a little bit. So they're a little bit wider where they connect to the case, and then a little bit more narrow at the bottom. But it's kind of subtle. Then they curve downward. This watch comes from Glycine on a NATO strap. So it came on the black, let me put my hand behind it so you can see a little bit better. It came on the black NATO. It's fine. The black NATO is actually pretty nice. It's very, very thin. It's very well made. It has a leather reinforcement for the holes here, and there's a lot of tiny little holes. It's a very nice NATO. It's one of the better ones I've ever, it might be the nicest NATO strap I've ever used. It does say Glycine here on the fully brushed buckle, and on the back it says stainless steel. The NATO's fine. I just didn't think it fit the character very well. I really like leather on pilots' watches, so I just had to put it on leather. This particular strap was supposed to be gray leather. I thought that would look good, but when it came, it's more of a like chestnut or something. It looks good. I'm happy with it. I think this would work on a ton of different straps. I'll just show you. Here's like a blue NATO. I think it would look good on this blue here. It would look good on a lot of different colors, a lot of different materials. Okay, let's go to the crown here. It's interesting. The crowns are different. The bezel lock crown it's thicker and it has a wider diameter. The actual winding / time setting crown is very small. You can still use it. It's still usable. You probably can't use it on the wrist, which is a good thing. You're not supposed to be messing with the time setting crown when it's on your wrist. There are 2 very distinct positions. One is for the date, and then one is for hacking and time setting. It is very responsive. Here, let me push in the crown. Nothing moved. The minute hand did not move at all. Okay, let's see. When I turn it, immediate response. So this is a high quality movement here, for sure. Yeah, it's, like I said, the hacking. When you're winding it, I was freaked out when I first got this because I went to wind it and it just felt like it was spinning freely. Like there is no resistance when you try to wind this. So that's kind of interesting, but it does actually wind. Interestingly, let me see if I can zoom in. The bezel lock crown has a cross hatch pattern on the face of it, while the time setting crown is just polished. Both crowns have functional but very minimal knurling. On the case back, I apologize for the grit and grime. I wear my watches and then with these videos, I'm not showing you what it looks pristine out of the box. You're gonna have to use your imagination for that. The case back is 10-sided, but yeah, you get to see the movement. There's a ton of text around the perimeter, all these numbers and stuff. 1094789, stainless steel, sapphire, automatic, 50 meters, Glycine, GL0377. So yeah, if you want this exact watch, that is the reference number. You won't go wrong. It's a little bit tricky sometimes with these Glycines because people will see the 24-hour markings on the dial and they'll think that it's a 24-hour movement inside. That's not always the case. Sometimes these are GMT movements, and so there'll be a regular hour hand too. So if you want this particular one, just go with that reference number that was on the back, the GL0377. The movement, as I mentioned earlier, it is a Sellita SW332. It's a 25 joule, 4 hertz, 4-hand GMT movement. There's only 3 hands on this one. That's because they put the primary hour hand on the GMT ring. And then the regular 12-hour hand rotation dealy there's just no hand on it on this particular one. So I don't know if they modified the SW330 for this, but that's what they're using. The SW332 came out fairly recently in 2020. It's only a 4-year-old variation. It's a variation of the SW300, which is very similar to the 21 joule ETA 2893. So these are kind of competitors, the SW330 and the ETA 2893. The SW330 has a couple of improvements. The main one is the 56-hour power reserve, which is 16 hours longer than the ETA 2893-2. Movement has Inca block anti-shock protection on these rubies in there. It has hacking and hand winding and a quick set date. There are 3 different grades to this movement, and this one is the lowest, which they call special grade, and it has standard finishing, which is also, there's 2 finishing options. That's the cheaper of the 2. This is just entry-level Swiss movement, basically. Entry-level Swiss GMT movement. Most basic finishing possible. But they did gussy up the rotor a little bit. They put on the striping and then this text here. The little airplane, the Glycine Airman text. Okay, how's the accuracy on this thing? Well, I wore this for 10 days. I guess 11, actually. The 11th day, I probably just let it sit and took the reading after 24 hours. Anyway, the average deviation was +6 seconds a day, and the daily variance ranged from +2 to +9. Is there a warranty? Maybe. Maybe there's a warranty if you purchase it from Glycine, but if you get it on eBay like I did from Watch Guru, there is no warranty. And that's what you get with Gray Market. It was new in box, but no warranty. And maybe this is kind of old. Maybe the warranty's already up anyway. It's one of those risks when you go gray, so you have to decide if that's worth it to you. And here's the box that came in. I like to show the box. I keep the boxes for who knows what reason. I guess just for these videos. But the thing is, I haven't thrown out the boxes for videos I've finished. But here you go. Here's the box. What's inside? There's a box within the box. And it's got all this protection to protect the inner box. So you really want that box to be safe from all harm until you throw it in the dumpster. Inside, what do we have here? Got the little pillow. Got the little, it says Glycine. I put this white paper so you can get a little contrast there. Kind of a dark gray. Get your silica gel. Came with a hang tag that just says the model number and the UPC. It doesn't have the price or anything. And this is kind of funny. They give you 2 manuals. They give you an automatic manual and a quartz manual. I don't know why they threw the quartz in there. But it literally just has the instructions for every possible movement they make. And it doesn't really tell you which one you have. So like Airman Cal 293. I don't know. You have to figure it out. You probably all know how to operate a watch, but those are there for you if you need it. And then of course the quartz as well. It seems like overkill, I'll be honest, how much they're given here. But there you go. That's what you get. Now on to the positives. Positives! All right, the positives. Man, there's so many positives with this watch. The first positive is, maybe it's just for me, but I love 24-hour movements. They really do a lot for me. I really like it. So I'm basically in heaven with this one. It's a very famous 24-hour watch, and I am so pleased to have it in the collection. The bezel lock is another positive. It adds a lot to the character here. It's a unique feature to this watch. Don't see that anywhere else. Yema makes a watch with a bezel lock, but it's on the crown. It's on the time-setting crown. So you have to unscrew the screw-down crown to move the bezel. I don't know, I guess that's cool too. But this one, you get the extra crown. It's distinctive. The finishing is good on this. That's another positive. It's decent finishing. The retro look is really pleasing to me. Let me put it back on the wrist. I haven't worn it on the wrist very much. Let me put it on the wrist. There we go. That's one of the benefits to these types of videos. You can see what it looks like on somebody's actual wrist. If But yeah, there you go. Here it is on my 7¼ inch wrist. Yeah, it's a good proportions for me. It's like the perfect size. Really is. It's not taking up too much of my wrist. It's slim. That's really nice. I mean, relatively slim. It's 12½, so it feels nice though. It feels very well proportioned. It's not small, it's not big, it's just right. It's a very versatile watch, classy and functional at the same time, and it's very useful for traveling. In fact, let me put it back on the 8-hour offset. My sister lives 8 hours earlier than I do, so this way I can know, well, this isn't the real time right now, 9. But if it was 9:20 a.m., I would know in her time zone it is 17:20, 5:20 p.m. Another positive is the versatility. So I've got it here on a leather. It looked good on that NATO too, but you could also put it on like other kinds of leather, other colors of leather. It would look good on a black leather, darker brown. It would look good with NATO straps. It would look good with nylon straps, fabric even, like a canvas. I think it would look good with tweed even. Make it a little more dressy. It's a positive that it has a Swiss movement and the accuracy is decent. Presumably, the Sellita should be an easy movement to service. Another positive is the heritage of the Glycine brand. There is a ton of history to the brand, the Glycine brand, and this model of watch in particular, the Airman, has so much history as well. And finally, the last positive is that to pick this up for $600 is incredible value, in my opinion. That's like micro brand territory, but this is the Glycine Airman for $600 that I got brand new. So that's pretty sweet. On to the negatives. Negatives. Okay, so negative number 1 has got to be the 50 meters water resistance. There's some low-hanging fruit here for the negatives. 50 meters water resistance is just disappointing. It's okay. I'm not going to dive into a lake with this or something. I'm just going to wear it around town, everyday watch. I'm not worried about it getting water in it if I'm bathing the kids or something. I think I'll be fine. But yeah, I wouldn't wear it to the pool or even the splash pad or whatever. So that's kind of frustrating. It'd be nice if it did have higher water resistance. The lack of loomed indexes is a little bit disappointing too. Another downside is the reflectiveness of the crystal. It really likes to reflect different lights, reflect my face. Here's my face. Final negative is, since I went gray market, there's no warranty. That's definitely a negative. All right, now on to the closing. In closing, was this watch a good choice or a bad choice for my collection? The question everybody wants to know. Well, it was a fantastic choice. I'm so pleased with this watch. It brings me so much joy. Although $600 is a lot of money, I feel like I got this at a bargain. It's got an SW330 in it. It's the Glycine Airman, for Pete's sake. The finishing is fantastic. Yeah, this is one of those watches that I've known I wanted for a really long time, and the price was always just way too high. I knew someday I was going to get it. I was going to save up. The fact I could pick it up for $5.99 is fantastic. And now that I can actually wear it around, I'm surprised how much I enjoy it. It actually kind of looks a little bit plain. So much of watch collecting is the mental thing, the fantasy, I guess. And I just get so much joy out of thinking about how in the 60s and the 70s, before there was any internet or anything like that, guys were flying planes across the globe with these watches, with this Airman. Yeah, it really puts a lot of the other watches in my collection to shame. The Chinese $100 watches. It's just totally different when you have a watch that the brand itself has so much history to it. It harkens back to the world as it was in the Cold War. It's a world I've barely even known since I grew up in the 80s. And I just love 24-hour watches. Yeah, black dials are really versatile. When I first got into watch collecting, I saw, people like black dials so much, and I'm like, that's boring. You should have colors. But when you actually have a black dial watch, it's just so nice. It's really versatile. It just works really well. I really like the stainless bezel on this. On my personal wrist, this is a perfect size. It's not too big, not too small. One of the downsides is it is a little bit hard to take pictures of this watch, but there's workarounds, and honestly, all wristwatches are going to reflect whatever's behind you photography can be a little tricky. And finally, the lack of loomed indexes and the low water resistance, they're annoying, but for me, they're not deal breakers. In this case, I just don't care, and that's how it goes. You have to take everything together. But yeah, that's all I have to say on the watch today. And if you've watched my channel before, I like to talk about the Bible after I talked about the watch. So now I'm going to share a Bible passage. Here's the disclaimer. I'm not a pastor or a trained biblical scholar or anyone with any sort of authority. I'm just a Christian, and I like to share passages of the Bible. So today's passage is Exodus 20, verses 4 through 6. The last video I made, I covered the first commandment. We've all heard of the 10 Commandments, I'm sure. Even if you're not a Christian or anything, you've heard of the 10 Commandments. This is commandment number 2, verses 4 through 6. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. So, this is the second commandment. And as I discussed in the prior video, there's some variation between Christians among where to put the numbers. Yeah, Catholics don't consider this to be a separate commandment from the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Today I'm covering verses 4 through 6. So even if you're Catholic, it's like this is supposedly part of your first commandment, is you shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Okay, so to kind of lay the groundwork here, Christians are under a new covenant. There was the old covenant in the Old Testament. You had to follow all these rules in order for God to keep his end of the bargain. It was the agreement. A covenant is agreement. But Jesus is a new covenant. And so the question arises, are the 10 Commandments still applicable? 10 Commandments are Old Testament. Do they still apply to a Christian? And the short answer is yes. But the commandments need to be interpreted in light of the revelation in the New Testament. For example, there's other stuff in the New Testament that kind of caveat the 10 Commandments. For example, the Sabbath. Jesus says things in the New Testament about the Sabbath, which kind of changes it up a little bit for a lot of Christians. So, from my perspective, historically, Protestants have taken verse 4 here, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, a lot more seriously than the Catholics. In Protestant churches, you're not going to see statues to saints. And you won't see people bowing down in front of the statues of a person and praying to that person who's a dead person. You're not going to see that in a Protestant church. I hope. For example, John Calvin said, when you prostrate yourself in veneration, representing to yourself in an image either a god or a creature, you are already ensnared in some superstition. That was his interpretation of the graven image thing. Don't make an image and prostrate yourself in front of it. Don't bow down in front of an image of some person or animal or something. The Puritans even took this commandment so seriously that they thought that putting a cross on a church building could be idolatrous, that people could worship that cross, and they didn't want to risk that. So the Puritans didn't even like the cross, really. A physical cross that you would look at and think about God when you're looking at the cross. They thought that was a problem. I don't go as far as the Puritans. Obviously, I'm wearing a cross necklace. And here's why. Verse 4 says, anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. So heaven means angels are a no-no. We shouldn't have a picture of an angel and we look at the angel and think fondly about the angel and worship the angel. The second commandment says don't do that. The reason why I think the cross is okay is because it's a symbol which represents the most monumental event in the history of creation. I mean, technically the cross is a thing, but that's not what this is for. That's not what the cross is for. When Christians look at the cross, they're not seeing some torture device. They're not seeing the thing of the cross. What they're seeing is the most monumental event in creation. I think Jesus on the cross is the most monumental event in creation. But it's an event. This symbolizes an event, not a thing that is in heaven or is in the earth or is in the water underneath the earth. Is the cross idolatrous? No, it's not idolatrous. And of course, that's my opinion. I know some differ on this. If we look at 5, it is explained that I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. So that explains what the purpose of the commandment is. God doesn't want to lose his followers to something else. So in my opinion, that means we should not worship anything other than God. But if I'm worshiping God, how is that idolatry? It doesn't make sense. The cross is a representation of God's amazing love for humanity. So if I'm venerating that, how am I idolizing something else? I'm literally worshiping God and his work. So I don't see the logic whatsoever in saying that God would be jealous of me venerating his work on the cross. It doesn't make any sense. So what is jealousy? People often confuse the terms jealousy and envy. Historically, they were different concepts and people understood the difference. Today, they kind of get mixed up. I think it's valuable to understand the difference. So I'm going to, these are my definitions. Jealousy is a concern about the threat of losing something we already have. A prime example is jealousy when a spouse takes an interest in another man. When your wife is hanging out with another guy or something. I'm not saying that applies to my life whatsoever, but I'm saying jealousy would arise in that situation. And jealousy could be good or bad. It could be innocuous, what's going on there. It could not be innocuous. And it also depends on the motives. So the motives of the person and the severity of the threat. Is this a real concern? And are my motives good? For example, here's a good example of jealousy. I can be jealous for a friend's or family member's sobriety. And that would be good. I don't want him to lose his sobriety because I care for him. I know that his life is better when he's not drinking. But I recognize it's a legitimate threat. So that's jealousy right there. That feeling of not wanting my friend to get drunk, wanting him to stay sober, that's jealousy. Envy is a desire to possess something that is possessed by someone else. So that's when I want the neighbor's Cybertruck. I just brought that up because that's in the news. They look pretty weird, but yeah, envy is a desire for something that belongs to somebody else. So all of this is to say, how could God be jealous of the cross? How is he worried that we're going to leave him when we venerate the cross? Venerate the work. I mean, it's an event. It's just so silly. Now, it's a little more clear when it's like people that we're venerating other than God. So let me end here with the practical application. Okay, so how should we practically apply what I've been talking about? Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Number one is that we need to be careful about any physical object of worship. As I stated earlier, some Christians are uncomfortable with even the cross. However, those same Christians are comfortable with the Bible. All right, got a Bible in my pocket here. Let me show you. They're comfortable with the Bible. That's an object that we have feelings of worship towards. The U.S. flag, other physical objects that we venerate or set apart. Maybe that's better than saying worship. I don't worship the Bible, but I set it apart. I think this is special. The Catholics say they are not actually worshiping the saints whose statues they kneel before. So there's a wide difference in interpretation here. But personally, I think we should be careful. I'm comfortable with abstract symbols like the fish or the cross, but not with statues of saints. I think that's too far. I think a statue of a saint is too far. I've been really light on the Bible reading today, so I apologize for that. But Colossians 1 verse 15 says that Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. That kind of sums it up. So anything that's in creation came from the Creator. That is where my veneration and worship should go, to the Creator, who is invisible. Any kind of physical representation I try to make that is a likeness of like a guy with a beard or whatever. I mean, God is invisible. According to the Bible, he is invisible. Invisible to me now with my eyes. I cannot see him. So we should not have any other images than the Lord Jesus. And in my opinion, that should be a mental image. I know I have a cross with Jesus on the cross. It belonged to my grandma, but I certainly don't worship that image of Jesus. In my head, I think about Jesus on the cross, but it's weird to have a statue, in my opinion. I think that's what this is all about. Don't have statues, don't pray to statues, don't venerate statues of people, or animals even. One was be careful about any physical object of worship. Two is be careful about who/what we praise. So all praise should go to God. God is jealous. It says that in the passage. God is jealous because he wants us to stay close to him. He doesn't want us to fall into sin, because sin bears with it consequences that will hurt us. God knows that pleasures that we derive from sin are temporary. People are hurt. Someone is hurt by every sin. Some person or God himself is hurt. Creation itself is hurt. Or the individual. Some sins that I do, you could say drug use. Oh, there's no victim. What about the drug user? The drug user is the victim. This is why God doesn't want us to sin. There's always a victim. So any obsession or fascination that drives me away from God is idolatry. I need to be worshiping God. It doesn't have to be an actual statue, but it very much could be a statue. Years ago, before I was saved, there was a time that I practiced Zen Buddhism. Practiced what's called Zazen. That means sitting Zen. So I was taught in how to practice Zazen that at the beginning, before I did my meditation, I was to bow down to a statue of Buddha 3 times. And then after the meditation, do it again. I did it. I thought, okay, I wasn't a Christian at the time. I wasn't saved. Actually, God saved me dramatically from all of that. But yeah, that's very much idolatrous. That's a textbook version of second commandment violation. So obviously that's a no-go, to be bowing down before statues. But I think we need to just be careful about who and what we praise as well. So those are the 2 things. Be careful about any physical object of worship, and be careful about who/what we praise. Praise should always go to God. All right, there is absolutely more that could be said on the second commandment. I just thought I would share my thoughts on it. And next video, I'll do the third commandment, so that'll be cool to look forward to. And if you're still with me, thank you. Appreciate you. And I hope what I said was of any use to you. Yeah, I do these videos because I feel like it's an opportunity to share something about God. And, there's some chance someday somebody's going to listen to this. They're going to hear something about God. Maybe it's going to plant a seed. I don't know. God will do with my words what he will. And I pray that he uses them for the benefit of others. So I will close with a prayer now. Lord, thank you for this opportunity. I pretty much always pray the same thing, it seems like, with these. Just thank you for the opportunity to share your word with others. And I pray that it would not return void, and that it would quicken people's hearts to realize whatever idolatry may be happening in their own lives, they may expunge it from their lives and just worship you. I pray that all of creation would praise your name. I pray that would happen soon. Pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace always and in every way. The Lord be with you all. And that's 2 Thessalonians 3:16. See you next time. And I know that